Thank you for joining us for this episode. Today, we are looking at a navy that shrank just as the world became more demanding. When the Cold War ended, a lot of people assumed navies would finally get a rest. No more constant tension. No more preparing for the end of the world. No more massive fleets prowling the world's oceans. But for the Royal Navy, that moment never came. Because while the Cold War ended, the United Kingdom's responsibilities did not. And that is where this story begins. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the cuts came quickly. Many ships left service earlier than planned. Crew numbers dropped sharply. Capabilities that had existed for decades were quietly retired. The logic was simple. The main enemy was gone, so the fleet could shrink with it. On paper, that made sense. But here are the questions that still matter. Did Britain suddenly stop being a global trading nation? Did overseas territories vanish? Did alliances disappear? Did crises politely wait for permission before breaking out? Of course not. The Royal Navy became smaller, at the exact moment that world became more complicated. Instead of preparing for one massive Atlantic war, British warships were suddenly dealing with many smaller problems, spread across the globe. In the Balkans, the Middle East, counter-piracy operations, sanction enforcement, and disaster relief. And all of this with fewer and fewer ships. So the Navy simply adapted. Instead of thinking in terms of large formations, it shifted toward flexible task groups. One ship might deploy for months at a time, switching roles as it went. Patrol this week, strike support the next, and escort duties after that. Crews became generalists. Platforms became multi-role, not by luxury, but by necessity. But the key thing to remember is this. The Royal Navy did not shrink into irrelevance. It shrank into efficiency. That efficiency came at a cost. A cost to keep Britain operationally credible in a changing world. Logistics. The unseen supply chain, the RFA. Here is a blunt truth. A modern warship without fuel, ammunition, and spare parts is not a weapon. It is just an expensive steel hull, drifting at sea, with brave men and women aboard. This is where the Royal Fleet Auxiliary enters the story. The RFA does not make dramatic headlines. You will not see it launching fighters or intercepting missiles. But without it, Britain's global naval presence collapses. Almost instantly. After the Cold War, this became even more important. With fewer warships available, each one had to stay deployed longer. That meant refueling at sea, replenishing ammunition without returning to port, moving spare parts halfway across the world on short notice. This is not glamorous work. It is slow, methodical, unforgiving. A single RFA tanker can keep an entire task group operational thousands of miles from the UK. That turns a small fleet into a global one. And this is something many people miss when comparing navies. It is not just about how many destroyers you own. It is about how long you can keep them fighting, and how far from home you can sustain them. The RFA is the reason the Royal Navy can still play in the same league as much larger fleets. Without it, the discussion ends very quickly. Here is where things start getting harder. A smaller fleet means there is no spare capacity, no deep bench, no easy rotation. When a ship deploys today, it often deploys hard, which includes long missions, high-tempo work hours, and minimal downtimes. Crews know that when they leave, there may not be another ship ready to replace them. That creates strain. Maintenance windows shrink. Training cycles tighten. Every breakdown matters more. Every delay ripples through the entire force. This is the hidden pressure of a lean navy. There is no room for failure. And yet, despite this, British ships continue to deploy at a pace that surprises even allies. That tells you something important about professionalism. But it also tells you how close to the margin the system often runs. This is not a navy designed for comfort. It is a navy designed to endure, Now let's bring this right up to the present day. Modern warships are astonishing machines. Advanced radars, integrated combat systems, missiles that can hit targets hundreds of miles away. But here is the uncomfortable reality. They are also extremely expensive, and they are not limitless. In places like the Red Sea, we are seeing a shift in how naval pressure is applied. Cheap drones, relatively simple missiles, systems that cost a fraction of what it takes to defend against them. One drone does not need to sink a destroyer to succeed. It only needs to force a reaction. A missile launch, an evasive maneuver, or just cause disruption to shipping. This is what people mean when they say modern ships burn easily. Not because they are badly designed, but because the cost-exchange ratio has changed. A £1 billion ship firing a £1 million interceptor at a cheap drone is already fighting an economic battle, just as much as a military one. For the Royal Navy, this reinforces a hard lesson. Technology alone does not solve these problems. You need layered defense, battlefield intelligence, early warning, logistics, and crucially, allies. The ship is no longer the battlefield by itself. This brings us to a reality some people still struggle to accept. The Royal Navy is not designed to fight alone, and that is not a failure. It is a strategic choice the modern British Navy has built around NATO task groups, shared intelligence, interoperable systems, British ships slotting into allied formations, as if they were part of the same fleet. This is why the Navy still matters far beyond its size. A British destroyer is not just one ship. It is a node in a much larger network. That network multiplies effectiveness, but it also defines limits. The Navy can contribute decisively, but it cannot carry the weight alone. And that is exactly how it is designed. So, what can the Royal Navy actually do today? It can deploy globally, it can protect trade routes, it can escort carriers, hunt submarines, defend against air threats and launch precision strikes. It can operate aircraft carriers as part of a wider force, and it can respond quickly to crises. Most importantly, it can show presence where it matters. It cannot sustain a prolonged, high-intensity naval war on its own. It cannot be everywhere at once. And it cannot absorb heavy losses without serious strategic consequences. That is not doom. That is realism. This is a navy built for relevance, not dominance by sheer mass. And that balance, between ambition and limitation, defines modern British sea power. Because the Royal Navy today is not the fleet of 1945, and it was never going to be. But it is also not a relic. It is a force shaped by pressure, by compromise, and by constant adaptation. And in a world where conflict rarely announces itself clearly, that adaptability may be the most important weapon it has. If you enjoy this kind of honest naval analysis, like the video and please subscribe to Ships of War. Because the stories that matter most at sea are not always the loudest ones.